Hello everyone and welcome back to Bobbin's Minecraft Let's Play. In this series featuring the FTB Infinity Skyblock. No, that's not right. FTB Infinity Evolved Skyblock mod pack. Gotta get all that out of my mouth. Since the last episode, I have been working on a number of things. There's actually a lot of elapsed time if you're paying attention to the day counter in the corner since the last episode. In this area, which I showed you in a previous episode, I've set up a few more reactors. It looks like they are currently going through fuel recycling at this point, so they're not really fueled and running very well at the moment, but they will get their fuel eventually. And I've also set up over here the rest of what you could consider a UU matter processing type of setup. What I was missing and that I've now set up is a scanner. This is an Industrial Craft 2 block that scans blocks, destroying them in the process. That is an important point. And once it has scanned the block, it loads it into this pattern storage that stores the pattern of the block. From the patterns, you can replicate the items. And in this particular pattern storage, I've got 4 patterns stored right now. One of them is sand and one of them is dirt. I use sand and dirt to test it because they're very cheap for testing with. And one of them is iridium ore and one of them is iridium reinforced plate. And these are used for a number of things. The most important one in the short term is if we go and look at the Certus quartz wrench. It's used in creating various items for applied energistics, which I would like to run at some point. And so I'm going to have to create a Certus quartz wrench. If I actually go and look at how you make the Certus quartz wrench, it uses 2 enhanced Galgadorian metal and 2 enriched Cenarium alloys. The iridium plates are involved in the Cenarium alloy production. Essentially, if you drill down, you find that you've got to have 8 of them for each one of these Cenarium alloy plates that goes into the production. And I've been working on that, and I'm making some progress on it. When I peeked in this machine, you saw that there was 1 there, but I've actually made about 30 more than that. Basically, I caught up on all of my UU matter, and so I'm out of it at the moment. We are still producing it, somewhat slowly. Progress is going along pretty nicely. Once these things refuel and get back up to maximum power, and something is slowing them down, and I may have to research what that is. But once that's done, I'll have this going a little faster, and I'll be getting more iridium plates. At the moment, it's just set to make them indefinitely. Alright, so the other item in the Certus quartz wrench that I'm going to have to deal with is the enhanced Galgadorian metal. And if I just drill down on this metal, it requires a large lump of Galgador, and that's made from 9 of these lumps of Galgador, and every 2 of those requires all of this stuff. The only one of these are pretty obvious and pretty available at this point, except if I go to the Eye of Galgador, I find the actual bottleneck item for me, which is gas tiers. So I need to make some gas tiers. One way to do it would be to find some way of grinding them in the nether. You could certainly set up a gas grinder. It's probably a little complicated because you've got to have a lot of space in it and they fly around, and it could be done. Wow, more loud weather. But there are other ways of making them too. If I come in here, blood magic is an option. A little bit complicated of an option. You've got to have weak blood shards, and you've got to go in some other step. You've got to create this catalyst. I'm not as familiar with blood magic as I probably should be, so that's not really an option that immediately strikes me as how I want to go, but this may be quite reasonable. It doesn't look terribly bad. You're just doubling gas tiers with some extra inputs, plus a fair amount of LP. That's not going to be just a huge amount. Another way is the sieve. I've actually probably got 7 or 8 gas tiers at this point from a sieve, And this is an option, but it's going to be kind of slow to do it that way because on average you're going to get around one gas tier for every 50 soul sand you put through it. That's quite a while. This is the option I actually want to pursue. I think that gas tiers, since you can get, they have a 10% production rate, which is actually a pretty good rate for an extra item from this ghastly queen. And if we look at that queen, it's really not that bad. It requires an ethereal and a baddie. Now, ethereal is actually a pretty tough one to get. You've got to go through a lot of the progression in Magic Bees to get it. But I'm already doing that for the achievement for start Gendustry. So that's sort of, it's a big one, but it's done. If I go and look at the baddie princess, which is the other piece of that, well, that's a skulking and a windy. Windy is another one of these that I already have at this point because of trying to pursue the Gendustry achievement. Skulking I don't have, but it is Modest and Eldritch. I have Eldritch, and Modest is just a hive bee. So really, get right down to it, that bee for producing the gas tiers is not going to be that bad, given that the hard parts of it I've already done. That sort of leads into what I want to talk about today. Today is going to be another day when I talk about bees. And what I want to do is I want to talk about a couple of aspects of bee breeding that I may not have really gone into much depth on in the last one, that really you should know before you go and spend a whole lot of time doing this sort of manual bee breeding for the achievement. Now, my actual progress right now, the bee that I'm trying to get is the Infinity Bee. And the reason we're trying to get it is because it produces this infinity comb that gets me the component that I need in order to start Gendustry. So let's look at what's in this bee. This is an energetic plus a silicon. I have energetic now, so I've made that much progress. If I go over here to my chest where I've been storing all my different bees that I've bred, energetic is right there, so I have it. If I come back over here again, I don't have... Where was that? I don't have the silicon yet. Silicon is Skystone and Ferrous. Now I do have Ferrous. That one is right here. I've been crossbreeding it, getting more drones, so I'm actually in pretty good shape on Ferrous. In fact, why don't I just go ahead and take this off of here, because I really don't need to produce iron nuggets 2 at a time. And I will put the Ferrous away, identifying the bee in the process. Some of the stats on these bees are a little bit enhanced compared to what I had before. Once I got cultivated, it had some additional stats on it, and I sort of swiped them. I think the fast here on pollination comes from Windy. I'll talk about those maybe just a little bit in a second, but let's go back to here. So Silicon with Skystone and Ferrous. Skystone I don't have yet, but it's Earthen and Windy, and I have both of those. So really I'm just maybe 3 or so bee crosses away from where I need to be in order to get all of the species. There's more to it than just doing that cross and getting the species. After that, you've got to isolate the particular species, and you've got to get some extra drones and make sure that you've got some supplied here. And I've been keeping them in this chest, and you'll notice that I've got plenty of drones of each type and one princess of each type. Usually it's an ignoble princess. The difference between ignoble and pristine is that if you are breeding them in something other than a bee house, the ignoble is considered to be genetically unstable, and occasionally the princess will die. I actually don't know that if I've ever had this happen. It does, I suppose, but I'm just careful about it, and it never happens. Sometimes I do go and cross them in other houses, but I haven't done it enough for this to rear its ugly head that much. Obviously, it does. The thing is, the reason these are used ignoble here is because they're just sitting in a chest. And if they're just sitting in a chest, then they're not being crossbred, and they have no chance of losing their genetic stability. So what I want to do is I want to breed my bees in such a way that I have the ignoble ones to be the copy that sits in a chest. That leaves the pristine ones for the sorts of crossbreeding where I would be concerned about losing them. No big deal. So let's talk about just a little bit about how I do this in order to get these bees to have the stats that they have. I mean, these really do have, it's not the best stats you could possibly get on them because I haven't gotten genes for all those yet, but they really do have some pretty good stats. They've got shortest lifespan, so they cycle as fast as possible. They've got fast production. This is a bonus to production, and I'll talk about it in a little bit different context in a bit, but this basically says that this bee is going to speed up its production of combs. They have a base rate at which they produce, and then they can have a different speed modifier here genetically that enhances the particular bee. The base rate is species based. Okay, pollination is slowest on this one, so no biggie there. This one has redstone for a flower. Fertility 4. You want fertility 4 on all of your bees while you're doing the breeding process because you want those extra combinations of genes so that you can pick them to get the best ones to go. And the more drones you have, that means more combinations, which means you can make a better pick. Effect none. This one originally had a lightning effect, but that has been bred out of it. And then all of these are things I talked about in previous episodes. We've got the both 3 so that we can do it really in pretty much any of our different biomes, if we had any other biomes. And then we've got nocturnal, tolerant flyer, and cave dwelling. So this thing doesn't care what the weather is. It doesn't care if it's underground. It doesn't care if it's day or night. That's very nice to have. Here's the possible produce, an energetic comb. This is actually a source of redstone. I don't need redstone from bees. But anyway, that's what we're going on. Most of these have some pretty good attributes. And so you might be thinking, if you've done this before and maybe you've used a good method. If you've used a good method, then what I'm about to tell you probably won't help that much. But maybe you just sort of randomly and haphazardly did this crossbreeding, and so you found that it took forever to get the particular attributes that you wanted on the bee that you were looking for. And then you would get the next species of bee and you would have to take forever doing it again. Well, you don't have to do it that way. That's what I'm about to really get into here. I have a chest here, and you'll notice I keep signs on everything so I can keep track of what I'm doing in each hive, because usually you want to be doing several things at once here because you don't want to just do one thing and sit and wait. And since you're doing several things at once, you can sort of lose track of what you're doing on a particular hive, and you don't want to do that. You want to go ahead and mark it with a sign or something so that you can remember what it is. But let's look at this model bees chest. These are bees that are waiting to be used in some way. They're princesses that are not currently in use. Some of them are of various different species. There's an arcane, a forest, a noble, and so on. The important ones are actually these ebonies. Now the ebony princess is one that I got early on, and there are really 2 reasons for using the ebony princess here. One of them is that this is actually a bee from Extra Bees that produces dye as a product. And the dye that this one produces is black, which is actually a useful one for me. I don't get it from a crop, and the other way to get it would be to have the squid tank. Well, I've removed the squid tank at this point, and one of the reasons I was able to do that is because I have these bees going and they produce black dye. The other reason for using ebony is that the dye bees from Extra Bees only cross with other dye bees from Extra Bees. And really the dye bees themselves have very little interest except maybe this ebony, which produces the black dye. So I haven't bred any of them. So basically this bee can be crossed with any other bee and not produce a new species. That's very convenient because it means that you can breed them in the apiary if you want, instead of the bee house, as long as it is a pristine, and not have to worry about some other species is generated in the middle of this process that is undesirable. The last reason for using the ebony bee is because one of the things you're going to want a lot of is you're going to want a lot of honey drops, and you need this to run the beealyzer to analyze all of your bees that come in. And different bees have different productivity. Now you saw the modifier earlier where it said fast for productivity, I think, or whatever it was called. Let's take a look at this one. Production fast. Okay, this is a modifier to the base productivity. We can see the base productivity on different bees though. And let's just type in forest here. And let's look at the forest princess. What is the productivity of this bee? Well, notice it's got a 30% here. That's the base productivity. It means that, not considering the other modifier, 30% of the ticks that go by for this bee are going to produce a comb. Bee ticks are longer than game ticks. They're not the same thing. Bee ticks, I don't know how long they are. They're pretty long though. They're 10, 15, 20 seconds, something like that. It takes a while. You see the hive flash whenever one of them happens. Okay, but 30% for the forest bee. Let's look at the cultivated. The cultivated is an important bee because by default, not only is it used for crossbreeding a bunch of stuff, but by default it has the fast production attribute on it, which is good. It also has an increased base productivity. The base productivity on the cultivated bee is 40%. So you get a lot more combs out of a cultivated bee because, first of all, it produces a third more than the forest bee just as base production, and then it has that fast modifier on it to make it even faster still. Let's look at the ebony bee and see what it has. It has 75% for honeycombs, so it is more than twice as productive as the forest bee, and almost twice as productive as the cultivated bee, not allowing for the difference in modifiers. And then it produces the specialty, the black tinted comb, from which you can get the black dye secondary to that. So the ebony bee produces a whole lot more combs for you. It will produce black dye for you, and it doesn't cross with other bees, which just makes it a very nice bee to use for what I'm calling my model bee. And the point of the model bee is this is the bee on which you crossbreed all of your stats. So if you want to have shortest lifespan on all of your bees, what you'll do is you'll get shortest lifespan on your model bee, and then when you go to try to purify the strain or whatever, in order to get the particular species you're interested in, you will be crossing it over with this model bee until you get the stats you want, and then you will make it the species. Don't make it species first and stats later. Make it stats first and then species later. You always need one copy of the species gene, but it's really just another gene. Don't waste a lot of time trying to preserve the species when you don't have the stats you want. Focus on the stats, keeping one copy of the species gene around, and then once you have the stats you want, start crossing those in order to purify the species last. This process has helped a great deal by having fertility 4 because it makes it less likely that you will end up with no drones or no princesses that express at least one copy of the species gene. So let's see how this works out in practice. I need to create a skystone bee in order to continue this progression. And that is a cross between a windy, and I have a spare princess here for windy, and I will just grab a windy princess, and earthen. And so I have drones here for earthen, so I'll just grab one of those, and there we go. Now I'm going to mark it with a sign that what I'm working on here is skystone. I think I'll do it here. And then I want to maximize the chance of getting a mutation, and there are frames you can put in these apiaries that will do that. And Extra Bees provides one called a soul frame that if you have a soul frame, it increases the chance of a mutation. If you have 2, then it increases the chances even more, and of course 3 gives you the maximum chance of a mutation. I'm actually missing one other thing that I need to mention before continuing on here. I'm going to cross the Windy and Earthen, and I hope to get a Skystone. But if I toss them into this apiary the way I've got it right now, that is not going to happen. And the reason it's not going to happen is because if I go look up the Skystone bee and see exactly how you get this, it's a cross between Earthen and Windy to produce Skystone. Good. But notice that the 20% that's mentioned here is in red, and if I hover over that, it says it requires Skystone as a foundation. So I need to get a piece of Skystone and put it under this apiary, or I will not get the cross I want. They just won't cross. So let me go get a piece of Skystone, and I'll be back, and we'll load it up. Alright, I'm back and I have my Skystone. Skystone is actually just made by clicking Skystone dust, which you probably have plenty of if you've been playing this, because it comes from sieving dust, on a barrel of lava, and it will produce Skystone in the barrel. That's how you get it. The other thing to keep in mind here, I'm about to put this under, but I'm going to dig room for 2 of them, and just like this place where I've got the bricks and the leaves, I'm going to go ahead and put 2 of them down. That way I can tell what is under here because it's effectively marked. So let's go ahead and put those bees in there, and they will cross, and then we're going to have to wait on them. So I'll be back in a little bit when these have finished, and we'll talk about the next step in the process. Alright, I'm back and these bees have finished. Let's see what we got here. I have a Skystone Princess, and if I do the analysis on it, it is actually a Skystone Windy. Fertility is 1, which is terrible. It requires a hot, dry climate, which I can't provide, but it does have both 3 for its tolerances right now, so I could crossbreed this one. Let's see what we've got here. Here we've got Windy Skystone. So this one does not actually show Skystone as the primary attribute, but it does have it. Let's see what the score on this is. Now normally I count up the attributes that are desirable to give a score. So this one's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And actually all of these will have 10 because if they're a Skystone Windy anyway, because of the way that it distributes them. Let's look at what it's like on, oh, that's a Windy Earthen, so that's of no use. And those are Earthen Windy, so they're of no use. So I have a Princess and a Drone, so I just need to cross them to refine the Skystone attribute. Right? Not right. Okay. Here's where the model beat comes in. This Skystone Princess, if I cross it, I'm going to get 1 drone out of it. And it's going to have a mix of these stats plus whatever its parent did. In this case, its parent would have the same stats, so it would be the same level of stats. So I could conceivably have a princess that's improved and a drone that's improved, or I could have some mix of a princess that is of that, or a princess that is actually worse, or a drone that's actually worse. It's kind of random, and unfortunately there's no way of knowing up front what's going to happen, except that I know that I will only get the 1 princess and the 1 drone to choose from, so I'm going to be stuck crossing them back that way. Clearly that's not going to help me make the progress that I want. So in reality, this princess is not anything I want to deal with right now. I'm just going to set it aside. I'm going to come over here to Model Beast, and I'm going to get an Ebony Princess. Now, this one is going to give me, the offspring of this are always going to have Ebony on one side. So they're all going to be carriers of ebony. Half of the offspring will be carriers of windy. So if it's ebony windy, when it gets done, it'll just get tossed aside. If it's ebony skystone, then I will keep it, but it will have better stats because the stats will be a mix of what this bee has and what this bee has, and this bee is much better. So I'm going to cross these this time. They're not actually going to cross, so I don't need the frames in here. And it's good to remove them because then you don't have as much of a chance of, let's say, having them wear out. They do take damage as they go on. So I'm now crossing this back, and I'll be back when that's done, and we can look at what the results of that are. Okay, progress has been made. This bee has now run its cycle, so let's see what we got. So we have a Skystone Princess. Importantly, it has lost the flammability effect. I really don't like to burst into fire every time I go near a bee, so that's a good thing. Our score here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So that's actually a very nice start. So I'm going to come over here and put it in here on the row that says 14, so I can remember what score it is. Ebony Windy, that one is not useful. Windy Ebony, also not useful. Windy Ebony, not useful. Windy Ebony, not useful. So this was actually an unusually bad draw. Usually it's not as bad as that, but you'll notice that we do still have this princess. Unfortunately, the princess is all we've got right now that has the species on it, so we're kind of stuck with using it. But we have lost the bad effect, and we've lost the fertility 1, so we're actually in much better shape. I don't have any qualms at all about crossbreeding this princess with a drone, and the drone that I'm going to pick is actually, if I just come back here and get one of these model drones. Now the reason I know that's a model drone I'll talk about in just a little bit, but this drone is the same stats as the princess that I used before. So I'll just take and stick this back in here, and we'll let that go again. Now, suppose it had been a drone that had the species on it that I wanted, then I would need to find another princess to cross over, and I would have just grabbed another princess out of my Model Bs. So you might ask, why do I have these Model Bs in here, or how did I get them? And the answer to that is, let's say that I have this Arcane, and this is some princess that now has junk attributes because I've crossed it over and I don't want to use it. Well, I can come back here to this back row. This back row does not have signs on it. I could put signs on it, but the only thing that's really going on this back row is that princesses are being crossed with drones that are the same stats that I want for my Model B. So these are model drones, and I've got several of them going back here. Let's just take and toss this Arcane Princess in here. So this will run through here, and I'll run it through several cycles, and when it's through with the cycle, it won't be an Arcane Queen anymore. It will be an Ebony drone that has the same stats, or it will be an Ebony Princess with the same stats as this drone. I'll have to do it several times to get everything to work that way, but eventually it will, and then I can just recycle that princess and use it as a Model B again. So that's how that's accomplished. The way that you get the drones ultimately is whenever you have a situation like this, I'll just go ahead and cross the princess back because I don't know what its stats are. No need to waste a honey drop evaluating it. Just cross it back because I need extra drones anyway. The drones that came in here, because I have not run them through the Beealyzer to identify them, I'm just going to take advantage of stacking. Identical drones will stack, whereas drones that are not identical don't stack. So if we click this one, it does not go up there, but those three do. So those three are actually matches for this, and I've just increased the supply of drones on this. That's how you get more of those. I guess that is about it for this at the moment. What I'm planning on doing is I'm going to go ahead and finish all of this stuff with the getting the Infinity Bee off camera. Once I get the Infinity Bee, I'll have the comb, and at that point I will do an episode that is focused on using Gendustry, because all of the bee breeding that I've been done right now, that I have done so far, is the painful manual way. And if you have Gendustry available, you don't need to do it the painful manual way. So we don't want to do it the painful manual way if it's not necessary, and we won't. Once I get Gendustry in place, then I will go ahead and set up, get some of those machines made. I'll set them up over here, and we'll deal with that. I will try to do the achievement on camera for it, and then probably cut and get the rest of it going. I don't know how the logistics are going to work. Probably shouldn't discuss the logistics of making the episode too much, because that's not really the focus. But once I've got that going, I'll have an episode devoted to doing it in Gendustry, and we'll see how to do it the easier, more sensible way.